Okay. Apologies for being late. We had the great shakeout today here at the legislature. And I just want to, before we start my regular availability, I want to just talk a bit about a bit of humanity in the legislature this morning. It was something that in my 15 years I see infrequently, but it's a constant reminder of the people who are sent by citizens across the province, coming from different places with different perspectives. At the end of the day, we're all still just people. And it was the 30th anniversary of the election of Mike Farnworth, first elected in 1991. And it was Mike DeYoung, his counterpart for many, many of those years, who stood and gave a very heartfelt and warm tribute to Mike Farnworth and his service to Port Coquitlam, as well as his service to the legislature as the House leader for the NDP for many, 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 many years, at the same time that Mike DeYoung was the House leader for the BC Liberals. And that led to a series of brief comments by people about the importance of reminding ourselves periodically how honored and fortunate we are to sit in the legislature to represent the people from our communities. Then we heard from an Indigenous member about his ancestors' reflections on the arrival of Europeans back in 1792. We heard from another member, a farmer, who this past summer worked with other farmers in Delta South to make sure that there was enough silage, enough hay for animals that were affected by the wildfire. We heard from a mom who's dealing with pediatric cancer with her youngster. And we also heard from a member talking about an 11-year-old in her community that has been exposed to bullying and intimidation and how she's trying to deal with that. And those moments of humanity are so infrequent in the legislature. I think it's important to reflect on that today, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to serve as Premier, to serve as the MLA for Langford-Juan-de-Fuca, and today was one of those days that we're reminded that all of us, despite our sometimes very aggressive differences, all come here with the same objective, and that is to try to make life better for British Columbians, and it's nice to have that confirmed every now and again. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Premier. As a reminder to everybody on the phone line, please press star 1 to enter the queue. You'll be limited to one question and one follow-up. First question today is from Richard Zisman, Global News.
Premier, I know you were asked about this in the House, and I'm just trying to understand what British Columbia did in terms of our vaccine card that meant that it is not in alignment with the federal vaccine passport. Will British Columbians be required to get additional documentation, or is BC going to do the work to make our vaccine card align with what Ottawa has produced?
Well, thank you very much for the question. And you'll remember that British Columbia and Quebec were among the first provinces to come out with an immunization, a vaccine card, so that British Columbians could, within their communities, go to the play, go to a hockey game, go out to dinner with friends, and interact in their communities or in British Columbia with other people who had also taken steps to protect themselves by getting immunized. The card simply says that you have received 2 doses of an approved vaccine, and you're also required to show proof of identification, and that can be a variety of different things. The federal government's test is much higher for international travel, and we said so at the time that we implemented our immunization card, that at the point where the borders are open, particularly, of course, to the south of us, and those who want to travel internationally are going to require some other form of identification distributed and approved by the federal government. That decision has been made. Those cards have now been developed, and they involve not just being immunized, but what vaccine did you receive, what date, what batch number did that vaccine come from. All of that information is held by the Ministry of Health privately and confidentially, but now that is going to be required to be part of the federal immunization or card or passport. We're going to continue to work with the federal government. What I want British Columbians to know is that if you have no plans to travel in the immediate future, the 3.7 million of you who have already downloaded a BC immunization card can continue to go to the play, can continue to go to a concert, go out for dinner with some friends. If you want to travel internationally or on federally regulated modes of transportation, you're going to require a federal card. And you can access that through British Columbia sources, and you can also, of course, access that by reviewing whatever material and information the federal government is providing at this time. But you're going to need two at the moment, and we'll see how we go in the months ahead, how we can bring those two together. But we wanted to initially, Richard, we wanted to make sure that British Columbians could participate within their own communities. The federal government's responsible for international travel.
Richard, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, in a roundtable you did last Friday with ethnic media in Vancouver, you described the requirement of a PCR test as stupidity. That's the federal rules that are now in place. When somebody returns to Canada, they must produce a test, one that they can get before they leave the country. Have you raised these concerns with the Prime Minister? Do you have any word from him that they may remove this requirement for travel? And if you had any conversation with Governor Jay Inslee, about the barriers that requirement have in terms of travel between BC and Washington State?
Yeah, well, I'll start at the front end. I have not spoken directly to the Prime Minister about the testing requirements to re-enter Canada. Officials have been having those discussions on my behalf. My Intergovernmental Relations Secretariat is raising these issues with the federal government. I find the notion that I could go and get a test in Vancouver, travel to the United States, and then come back with that very same test as kind of counter to the whole point. The point is, if you're traveling somewhere else and you may have contracted COVID-19, you should be tested first before you return so that the border officials can have a good understanding of what your health situation is. The notion that a 3-day-old test received in Vancouver is going to be good enough in Bellingham 2 days later doesn't make sense to me, and that's what I articulated in my conversation with the South Asian media last week. And to put a finer point on it, I had been invited by Governor Inslee to visit Seattle this week to talk to the Mayor of Seattle about pressing issues that we've been working on over the past number of months, to sit down with a business roundtable. All of those plans were being made. And then the notion that I would get a test and coming back on a Saturday, so having to get a test in Vancouver to confirm that I was traveling outside of the country didn't make any sense to me. The borders are not open to all British Columbians yet, so I've canceled the trip. I very much regret that. I was looking forward to seeing Governor Inslee, the Mayor of Seattle, Jenny Durkin, as well as maybe taking in a Canucks Kraken game. But all of that is been postponed, not just because of the test, but that was a factor in the equation. And also, of course, without the border being fully open to other British Columbians, although the trip was largely business, there would have been some recreation involved in that. I didn't want to create more grief for other travelers. I wanted to be as transparent as possible about my actions. I do believe that the test requirement will mean that those who like to go for a day of shopping in Seattle will think twice about it. And the Minister of Health has made it clear we don't want to see people going and pretending to have COVID symptoms so they can get a test so they can go shopping. And not that British Columbians would do that, but that is a possibility. We want to make sure we're focusing our testing on those with symptoms so that they can take preventative measures to protect their families if they are COVID positive. So there's a whole bunch of question marks in my mind about the testing regime that were brought forward quite honestly and in good faith at a time when borders were uncertain. Those border issues are now becoming clearer. Vaccinations are now, of course, with British Columbians, almost 90%. First dose, just 83.5%. Second dose. So we have a protected population, and as they travel, their immunization, I believe, should be sufficient to cross borders. But those are decisions made by the federal government. Long answer, sorry.
Next question is from Camille Baines, Canadian Press.
Hi, Premier. I'd like to know if you had some idea that there would be a nationally standardized vaccine passport and introduce a different one anyway. And if not, what kind of leadership should the feds have shown so the provinces wouldn't have had to use their own resources to come up with passports that would have to be replaced?
Well, thank you for that. And we were in discussions, all provinces, through the Council of Federation with the federal government in the spring. about the need for some form of immunization card. Again, the federal government is responsible for international travel, and so that was not my knitting. I left that to them to deal with. But we had a very high uptake on immunizations in British Columbia, as you know, leading the country. Quebec and British Columbia both almost dose for dose in terms of per capita immunization. Both provinces agreed that we needed to make sure that our citizens could engage with each other confidently and knowing that those around them, whether it be in recreation, the arts, or just out for a meal, we're also taking those precautions. So we acted proactively because we felt that it was important to do so. I don't want to diminish the importance of more information for international travel. We oftentimes, certainly leaving North America, you require a passport in almost every jurisdiction you travel to, which has a whole host of personal information. So I felt that the federal government would manage international travel in their way, and we would manage our domestic interactions until such time as there was clarity internationally about what would be required. You will know that not that long ago, in very recent memory, AstraZeneca was not recognized as an appropriate immunization by U.S. officials. That's now changed, and there will continue to be changes as the international community works through these issues. And that's the responsibility of the federal government. I don't begrudge them that. I do not regret for a minute that we took immediate steps to give people confidence that they could travel with their colleagues and within their community.
Camille, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. What types of issues or concerns will you be bringing up with First Ministers around this as far as resources that had to be used for vaccine passports by individual provinces?
Well, the federal government has committed to funding these passports as they come forward and working with the provinces as we distribute them. So I'm not concerned that the cost will be an issue from the provincial treasury perspective. It is, again, we've been working together collaboratively, federal and provincial governments, both orders, with different political perspectives right across the country for almost from the beginning of the pandemic. And so I'm confident we'll continue to do that. Again, obviously everyone would like to have most things done yesterday. It would have been nice to have a federal immunization passport available before now, but there were a whole bunch of very good reasons why that wasn't the case. Uncertainty about AstraZeneca is an example that's near and dear to my heart because I'm a 2-dose AstraZeneca guy, as is Premier Doug Ford. So we were very concerned that other jurisdictions, mostly the United States, were not recognizing that vaccine. So all of these issues had to be resolved, and that's the responsibility of the federal government, and they've been working through those.
Next question is from Rob Shaw, Check News.
Oh, hi, Premier. I just wanted to ask you about this FOI bill you've got before the House, the proposed new $25 application fee. You cited in question period the opposition clogging up FOI. Your government cited a particular journalist filing a lot, but there are others, including a joint letter from BC 6 journalism schools today saying you're penalizing a whole bunch of people with this fee who are using the system responsibly, and they want you to find a compromise, like a certain number of free requests or something, and then charging prolific users. What do you say to that and the general pushback on this?
Well, I like the idea of your 10th coffee is free card. That sounds like a good idea. But no, first of all, we haven't settled on a fee. The bill allows a fee to be set by regulation. Other jurisdictions have fees. We felt that it was important for Executive Council, for Cabinet, to be able to put in place a fee if we felt it would be necessary after debate in the legislature, which has been vigorous, as everyone would expect. But there's no fee has been set, and no commitment to actually have a fee is in the legislation. There is an ability to prescribe one, and that will unfold in after debate and after passage of the bill and the bringing on of the regulations. It's not the intention, our intention, to restrict access, people's individual access. There will be no fee for individuals looking for information. But I don't know if you want to zoom in on that. That's my telephone screen. You'll see from that I play Scrabble. I have Spotify. I check my heart rate. I know what the weather's going to be like in Prince Rupert. And I have email, I have text messages, and I have a telephone, and a host of other things that I don't even know what they are. But for some reason, the opposition believes that not just my telephone, but the telephones of thousands of public servants should be available for some reason known only to them. I think the vast majority of British Columbians could care less, and they would prefer that their government focus on providing information to them as they request it so they can have a better understanding of why government makes decisions, why it is that government would hold records on an individual. All of that can be done without any cost. All of that, about 40% of the applications are for that reason. But there has been an extraordinary proliferation in requests for information from political parties. And I, full disclosure, when I was in the opposition, we used the Freedom of Information Act effectively to understand why governments were making decisions, and also, in many instances, to expose where they were disregarding the act. And so I believe that voluntary disclosure of information is the best way forward. Now, if you want access to binders that are created for the estimates debates in government, you want transition documents that were prepared for incoming governments, former governments would have withheld those documents, would have severed them. Those are voluntarily and proactively being disclosed now. And I believe we need more proactive disclosure of information that sometimes takes months and months to release because of the processes we have in place to protect personal privacy. And to ask a deputy minister who may receive somewhere over 6,000 electronic messages in a month to disclose that every month doesn't make any sense to me. If you ask that deputy minister what decisions were made during that month and what documentation enforced those or supported those decisions, that makes sense to me. So I believe the bill that we've got before the House, first of all, does not impose a fee. Second of all, does not impose a fee on individuals in any event, even if we use the regulation ability to put in place a modest fee. So I believe that we're modernizing the bill. We're reminding people that there's a lot of information in the marketplace. We want to get that out as freely as possible, and I believe we're on the right track. It has generated a lot of excitement by some, and certainly a letter from the commissioner. But the commissioner had 12.5 meetings with government officials on the creation of the act, and it turned out that we disagree on some points, and that's as it should be.
Follow up, Rob?
Is it as it should be? I mean, we have those watchdogs in place to advise you and governments not to do things that are bad. So if there's a 7-page letter from the Privacy Commissioner urging you to take things out of the bill and saying that he's baffled that the government is doing this, well, there's a legislative committee that's supposed to be reviewing it that hasn't even met yet. Why would you not listen to that? And is there any chance you're going to pause this thing and kind of accommodate the commissioner, or is the intention to just kind of move forward despite his 7-page letter?
Well, first of all, you're suggesting that the 7-page letter was 7 pages of criticism. It's not. There are elements that we agree on, and those are articulated in the letter as well. One example, the letter suggests that the Premier's office is now exempt from FOI. It's not. The Premier's office is integral core government. It's not another body of government in Schedule 2, which is where it's now been removed. So we're modernizing the Act based on the experience of professional public servants over 3 decades now, since the bill was initially brought forward. So I believe that the changes that we're making are in the interest of full disclosure, in the interest of making sure the public can have confidence that their privacy is being respected, and that government information is available to those who seek it after all of the appropriate reviews by government employees, which is, again, part and parcel of the advice we regularly get, not just from this privacy commissioner, but from previous privacy commissioners.
Binder Sajjan, CTV.
Hi, Premier. Your minister noted that other jurisdictions have an FOI fee between $5 and $50 and said she is recommending a number right in the middle of that. And she also suggested that it would allow for requests to be processed in a more timely fashion, I guess because there would be fewer requests. Experts are telling us they're worried that this is going to hurt transparency. Given in opposition how much you relied on FOIs that were filed by your caucus or other agencies and journalists, to hold the government to account. That make you a hypocrite?
Well, I'm glad I got the hypocrite part. You just cut out there for a minute, but I get the thrust of your question. Look, I said today in the legislature, if this bill passes, those that used to work in the Premier's office who regularly destroyed documents would not just be ridiculed because they were exposed. They would be fined heavily for disposing of documents. We have beefed up enforcement so that we can ensure that documents are made available and they are not subject to a shredder if there's something that doesn't make the government look good. I think that's a step in the right direction. I think most people would agree with that. I believe that thousands and thousands and thousands of requests are not designed to better understand why decisions are being made, but instead they're acting as surveillance, looking over the shoulder of public officials. You'll remember famously the Deputy Minister to then Premier Gordon Campbell talked about a verbal culture within government. I believe that we need to take steps to ensure that that is not the order of the day, and that there are documents that are produced and recorded and available that demonstrate why decisions are made, and that's the direction we want to go to when it comes to freedom of information.
Follow-up, Binder?
Yes, I'd like to ask you about certain restaurants that continue to defy the vaccine passport requirements. We've heard the appeals from lots of officials to say why this is needed, why the vaccine passport is in place. What do you say to those restaurants that continue to defy the vaccine passport law? Well,
I say that almost 90% of the marketplace believes that vaccines are safe and effective, and they are encouraging the last 10% of the population that are hesitant or have not had the opportunity to get a vaccine, encouraging them to do so. It is the best tool we have at our disposal individually to take steps to protect ourselves and our families. And I encourage people, if they've not yet been vaccinated, talk to people who have been, work through these issues, get immunized. And for those businesses who believe that this is a better course of action, there are consequences for them, and the media have been documenting those quite effectively. If you're not prepared to follow the rules that everyone else is living under in a civil society, there are consequences, and we've seen that.
Next question is from Parmeet Kamra, Red FM.
Hi, hello, Premier. My question is, the federal government announced some new benefits today, and some benefits have ended as well. Is your government planning to start some benefits on your own to support businesses of BC, especially the hard-hit sector during the pandemic?
If you're referring to programs for businesses that are affected by changes in public health orders, we're going to continue to monitor that. I'm not sure what issues the federal government have dealt with today. So if you wanted to, I think we give a bit of a grace question here if you could clarify for me. I'm not aware of any programs that the federal government has canceled today. I've been working on other matters. So if you could give me a bit more information, I'll try and answer your question.
Actually, the government announced that the Canada Recovery Benefit, they have been cancelled, and the wage subsidy as well. They have ended on 23rd October. Will be going to end on 23rd October, but then Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit and Hardest Hit Business Recovery Program will be implemented, and they will be extended till May 7th. I was just concerned, like hard-hit business, especially the BC, which is based on tourism sector, main earning is from tourism sector, whether they will be providing any kind of special benefits to these sectors so that they can recover really quickly.
Thank you. Thank you for the further information. The CERB benefit was integral to many families to get through the pandemic. But here in British Columbia now, there are more people working than there were before COVID struck back in March of when we declared the public health emergency back in March of 2020. So the economy is percolating along, but you've raised very importantly the consequences for the tourism sector as we go into the winter. Of course, many ski hill operators and other winter-based tourism operations are excited about the prospect of more people coming to British Columbia to enjoy the benefits of our superior skiing opportunities and other winter activities. So we assume that those industries will carry on. Others that have been adversely affected still have opportunities to access programs that have been put in place by the provincial government. And as we see continued closures in the north, in parts of the eastern Fraser Valley and in the interior, we're going to assess that. The Minister, Ravi Kahlon, is observing activities in those regions to see what the consequences of health orders have been, and he'll have more to say on that as time goes by. But a very good question, and I think the federal government has looked across the piece and seen that most of the economy, certainly here in British Columbia, is back to where it was or beyond, save and except the tourism sector for all of the reasons that we're well aware of.
Parmeet, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you so much.
Great. Next question is from Lisa Euston, News 1130.
Hi there, Premier. I'm wondering with the vaccine passes, so when the federal program kicks in on the 30th, I know personally we know someone who's flying on the 30th, are they going to need a PCR test, or is their BC pass going to still work? I think there's a lot of questions about how this is going to work for people who are flying over the next month once the federal program kicks in, that to get on a plane or a train, you need to show you've been vaccinated, and if you don't have that, you need to show a PCR test. So what happens for those people in the gray region?
Yeah, well, we're going to hopefully clarify those issues in the days ahead. The federal government has just announced their plans and how they want to proceed. I know that the BC card will be acceptable for a period of time. I'm not sure how for travel. I'm not sure how far that extends. So I don't want to give misinformation, because you're absolutely right. This does create confusion for people who are anxious to travel. But we were pretty clear that these are, if you're leaving the country, these are federal issues, not provincial. We've been collaborating very effectively on responses to COVID between the two orders of government, and I'm confident that we'll be able to continue to do that in the days ahead. But I don't want to give information to your listeners that won't be accurate. We'll have more information in the days ahead. The good news is it's a week before the individuals you're referring to are traveling, and hopefully they'll have the information they need. Again, I would encourage people to talk to their members of parliament recently elected. That would be the first place I would start. We're going to be working together, to be sure, but these are federal rules and better explained by federal representatives.
Follow-up, Lisa?
I just want to clarify that. So although you're saying that you're going to get more information, for people who are left traveling over the next few weeks to see family or whatever else within Canada, so they should wait for what you have to say, but then also call their MP? It seems like people are kind of being hung out to dry here.
If that's your conclusion, I guess. What I'm trying to say is that the federal government made an announcement today that we're going to be working through with citizens to get the best information possible to them. Oftentimes it's through opportunities like this, but no one's being hung out to dry. We are still in the grip of a global pandemic. We still have unacceptably high case counts in areas where immunizations are low. The immunization card has been a blessing to so many people and so many businesses. So as we get to the place where people are now spreading their wings and traveling, I would ask for a little bit of patience as we make sure we get this right. It speaks to the PCR testing as well. Very valid at the time that it was a key tool for people to ensure that they were safe. But as time's going by, we're going to need to change and amend those things. And I think most British Columbians understand that.
Last question today comes from Lisa Cordasco, Vancouver Sun.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Premier. I'd like to ask about your one-year anniversary as a majority government. When you called the election last year, you said you did so in part because you were unable to get things done as a minority government. So what have you done since being elected with a majority that you were prevented from doing before?
Well, one thing we have been able to do is to effectively bring forward legislation with respect to budgeting. We had at the critical point in the summer of 2020 was just prior to the end of the session was passing a supply bill. That was amended on the floor by our partner in our confidence and supply agreement. That seemed to me to be untenable as we went into the grip of the pandemic. We wanted to make sure we could make rapid decisions with respect to putting in place programs to protect British Columbians, to make sure that they were getting the resources they need to keep their businesses going, to keep their family budgets in line. The COVID benefit is a good example of that. I believe that we have made great progress on a range of other issues, whether it be childcare, bringing forward a childcare agreement with the federal government that will see the expansion of $10 a day childcare spaces challenges. Would that have happened without an election? I don't know. But what I know with absolute certainty is that what we did need is a stable government that was focused on making sure that every day we were looking at what the needs of British Columbians were rather than on politics. And the best way to deal with politics is to ask the public what they think. We did that, and I'm grateful that they returned a majority government for us to deal with the challenges that we're facing. And they're numerous, as you know, Lisa. I believe the decision was the right one at the time, and it's proven out to be the case.
Follow-up, Lisa?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Premier. Your majority government has been accused of being unwilling to cooperate with the other parties. Why has your government refused opposition requests to call the Standing Committee on Health to look for solutions to the opioid crisis, and has also refused opposition requests to call the Standing Committee on Aboriginal Affairs to deal with reconciliation?
Well, we have been working collaboratively with members of the legislature on a myriad of issues. Standing committees, if you go back, Lisa, and do a little bit of investigative journalism on what used to happen in this place. First of all, we are in the middle now of a fall session. They were infrequent, as rare as hen's teeth, as my mom would say, under the former administration. We're meeting in the legislature. We're having discussions. We had a day of humanity today. I hope we see more of those in the future. But governments and opposition in our adversarial system disagree with each other. And I'm not surprised that the opposition would take the opportunity to say that everything I do is awful. And I'll take the opportunity to say sometimes they're very helpful. And between those 2 points is where the public would probably want us to be. They want us to focus on their needs, not on what happens in the legislature or as important as those debates can be. And we have a very important debate going on right now about a bill before the House. We'll be informed by that, by interventions by opposition members. So the collaboration and the listening goes on every day, as long as the House is sitting. The former government would pass their budgets. I think there's one more. No. The former governments would pass their budgets and then leave the legislature idle for long periods of time. I don't intend to do that, and I've done my level best to make sure that legislators are here to be accountable to their constituents and to be accountable to each other about the trade-offs and the tough choices that are before British Columbians. The bill before the House with respect to modernizing forestry in British Columbia, which will allow us to roll out more changes on old-growth forestry. All of those issues are very, very difficult. They take time, and what we've been doing is working, I believe, to good effect with those who want to work with us to get the outcomes British Columbians want to see.
That's all the time we have. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.